What's up, everybody? Jeremy here from JBL. I'm here with Reme and the whole Unique team here at Unique. And today we want to do a little DIY on how to put an amplifier in your car. So we need to make sure we get enough power to the amplifier. So in this particular install, we're using one JBL Club Series amplifier. So we've run one piece of 8-gauge wire from the battery, inline fused, back to our amplifier. If you ever think that you may do 2, 3 amplifiers because you really want to do an awesome system, run 4-gauge. Honestly, you can never run too big of a power wire. Now, with that in mind, do you need to run 0-gauge? Probably not. 4-gauge for most installs is ample. So you want to run your wire from the battery all the way back to where you're going to position your amplifiers. All right, guys, so we are under the hood here. We're getting ready to run our power wires. So just a couple things we want to talk about. We've got our positive terminal here on our battery. I've got our inline fuse. In this particular install, because it's a Jeep and we like to go off-road with it, we're going to use a marine grade breaker here, and Reme's found a nice clean spot where we're going to stick that. We always want the fuse to be within 18 inches to 2 feet of that battery, right? So that if there is a short along the way, that we don't have a fire, because nobody wants that in their car. Our 8-gauge wires here that we're going to run back. Now, we're only doing a single amplifier install in this particular Jeep. If you're going to run multiple amplifiers, I'm going to run a 4-channel amp because I want to put speakers in. I'm going to run a subwoofer amp. I would really recommend running 4-gauge. If you're going to run more than that, consult kind of a power consumption chart to figure out what you need. But for this particular install, we're going to run 8s. Reme's got his tools here. So kind of, run us through what we're going to do.
So just very simple. We got our 8-gauge here. We're going to put a nice copper terminal on here so we could go onto our battery terminal. We're just going to make sure do a nice little crimp on there. Make sure it's real tight. And then you could take a little heat shrink, and then we could put the heat shrink over it.
Yeah, right, because that'll keep any strands or any contact points.
You want no wire strands sticking out, nothing like that. You want to keep it nice and clean, so put a nice little piece of heat shrink right here, seal that up, and then you can put loom on here. You want to keep everything nice and clean, especially underneath the engine compartment.
Sure. So this is going to attach to the battery.
Yes.
And then we're going to attach it to our fuse.
Right.
And we're going to mount our fuse here.
Yep.
Then from there, what we're going to do is run it to the firewall. So this is where, again, safety kind of comes into place. You want to make sure that this front side of your firewall is nice and clear where you're going to make your hole. Check the inside. Check for wire harnesses. Check for your heater core, anything like that. Make sure, check, triple check, quadruple check, right?
Have somebody on the inside poke, knock on the firewall, can check there's nothing there. Last thing you want to do is puncture something that you don't want to, and then you turn into a whole other ballgame with
Absolutely. So again, this gets back into, as a DIY guy, if this particular thing freaks you out and you're not comfortable doing it, seek a specialist. What we don't want to do is see you put a hole in the firewall and cause a problem, or we've seen it, I know I've seen it in my years, someone runs it up here and they've got it through the door jamb, and what happens when that door closes?
Sparks.
Bad things, right?
Browns out, all that good stuff.
So we're going to go ahead and put the hole in the firewall here. One last thing I do want to touch on is power distribution. So again, we discussed in this particular install, we're doing a single amplifier, so 8-gauge is sufficient. If we were going to do multiple amplifiers, or we have that forethought that we may do it in the future, we would run 4-gauge, and we would use one of these. And what this is going to do is give you a single input for a heavier power wire. Then you can fuse each individual output and take it to your amplifier.
Right.
Consult the power consumption chart to figure out the appropriate under the hood fuse here so that we can feed this properly. So I'll tell you what, why don't you go over here, I'll climb underneath there and give you a little knock, and we'll get the hole done on the firewall.
Sounds good.
So we've run one run of 8-gauge wire from the battery all the way back here. I've got my ground wire right here, which is run and it's grounded solidly. Reme already went ahead and took care of that. I've got my remote turn-on wire right here, and all we're going to do is kind of screw those right into the terminals on the amplifier.
Okay, so we're going to take our RCAs coming from the front. It's going to be a 4-volt input, so we have our switch input level set to low, and then it has a white and a red. So you see the white and the red inputs right here. That's your left and your right. Make sure they're securely put in there, nice and tight. That's a good connection. And then we have our gain, our crossover, and our bass boost. We'll worry about that once the subwoofer is inside. We can adjust. So right now we're just going to make the connections. So we're going to flip it around. And we are going to do our power and our ground connections. We're going to start off with the ground. You want to make sure that the ground wire is grounded very good first. And make sure you have a good solid ground inside the vehicle. Go into the frame of the car. Going to put that into the GND terminal right there on the amplifier. You're gonna make sure it's tightened down really good. JBL has a nice easy setup here, so you can just use a Phillips tip. Make sure it's nice and tight. You want no wire strands coming out of the sides there, make it nice and clean. You don't want no wires touching. This also takes a 4-gauge in, but we're using an 8-gauge here. I like to put a little twist on the top of the wire so it fills the hole nice. Nice and tight. Make sure the wires aren't loose. Make sure it's solid. And then we will work with our remote line. This is going to power up the amplifier when the radio is turned on in the front. This is what turns on the amplifier. Give that a little twist as well. That goes into REM for remote. Make sure that's nice and secure. You don't want to go too tight. You'll feel the wire and you'll feel when it's tight. Pull on it a little bit. You got a nice, secure, solid connection. And then you want to use some wire ties. Make sure the wires aren't floating all over the back of your car. Make sure everything's nice and neat, solid. Makes for a nice, clean install.
All right, guys, so we've wired up our JBL Club Series woofer in this real nice, clean, simple box that Reme built for us. Basically positive to positive, negative to negative on our amplifier. Again, Reme, thank you for letting me hang out here at Unique, and I appreciate your help. Take care.